Hello and welcome, everyone. Today's guest is my friend Linden Reid. Cool, cool. Well, thanks for joining me and being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Cool. So, let me just start off with how I know you and stuff like that. So, I know that you worked in the video game industry, and we met at a K-pop studio where you took one of my classes, and then eventually you became one of my private students, and then we learned dances like BTS, Monsta X, NCT, etc. And then I know that you also do some other art things like photography, and now you're making the pivot into the industry, from the industry to education. Is there anything else you want to add to that?
Um, no, that's about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, unless you just want to get up and do one of the dances.
Yeah.
That's
Maybe I'll link to one of our dances together, or
Oh
something
my
like
god, what
that.
an introduction. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't worry. Like I said, if my audience has listened to it this far, everyone from season one, they're all dancers, so it's gonna be a fun treat. So yeah. Anyways, I think we can just start off and go straight into first topic. So, I'm curious. You have an interesting background, I think, and maybe you can kind of walk us through like where you're from, like what growing up was like, and then how it led you to your current career path.
Yeah, I was born and raised in Houston, Texas. Not from California, but it keeps sucking me back because of my career.
Mhm.
I've kind of always been an artist. I think that's like been one of my like core things just like growing up. Yeah, I lived in Houston up until like my senior year of high school. I moved to Austin. And then I went to Louisiana State University for college. And I studied computer science. And I knew from like the second that I was going into school that I wanted to do games. Because I mean, I had been a huge gamer my whole life. I actually I started um with my interest in like not just like playing games, but like the development side of things on Neopets as a kid. Are you familiar with
I
Neopets?
am, yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, just in case people aren't, that was like a web game, like a pet game where you like could collect these different like fantasy pets and like take care of them. And it also had an aspect games don't do this anymore. This is like way back in the day, really, really aging me here. But you could like code like your profile, like you could on like MySpace to like customize it. And so that's where I got started like coding. And then I ended up like taking some CS courses in high school, some computer science courses following that. And I just like got really into like the game development like side of things because of like a YouTube channel. So basically just like born and raised in Houston technically, but very much on the internet. And that's what like got me into not just like gaming, but like the game development side of things. And then yeah, I studied computer science in college and just like from then had been like laser focused for like a really long time on like working in games. Um yeah. Is
Was
that yeah.
That's perfect. What is there like a so I want to backtrack. So you worked at Blizzard and that's
Yeah.
awesome, but we'll get there. But how did you decide like what aspect of video games that you studied and or wanted to work into? I think for someone like me who's never worked in the
Mhm.
that's false. I did used to work at a video game company, my first job.
Oh, really? Wait,
Yeah.
I didn't know
I was like,
that.
wait a minute. Memory unlocked. So for those of us, most of us who haven't worked in video games, there's obviously a lot of aspects to it. So then, like, where do
Yeah.
you start? If I'm sure there's a lot of people out there like, I would love to work for Blizzard or Riot or whatever.
Mhm.
And I like video games and I want to work in that. So, like, how did you choose that?
Yeah, basically what I understood from like there was like a YouTube channel that I was watching and a lot of these videos are still up. It's called Extra Credits. And they posted a bunch of like behind the scenes like talking about like the like development side of things. And I think that's where I got like a preliminary like understanding of what even like goes into making games. And if I remember correctly, what I understood at the time is that like the two main things that you could be studying in college to go into games, which this is a little bit of an oversimplification, but it's still pretty good advice, is either like art or like computer science.
Mm.
And there are a lot of other aspects to like, working at a game company. Like you could be studying like business and marketing or, something else along those lines. But on the development side of things, like those are pretty much like the way to go. And there are also like game development degrees now, but there were like fewer back then because this was like, for some context, also this was like 10 years ago. Like
Right.
I started college in 2012, so oh my god, it was over 10 years ago. Yeah.
You are old.
Well, I actually just turned 30. It was my birthday like a couple weeks ago.
Nice. Yes.
Yeah,
Happy belated birthday, by the way.
thanks. But yeah, at the time I like I had always been an artist and I loved drawing. I think, to be really frank, the reason that I did computer science instead was because I was a little bit shy about doing art like as a profession, and I was also very interested in like the technical side of things. So I was like, this seems like a good way to blend both my artistic and technical like interests on like the good side of the coin. And the flip side of the coin was I was also just very shy about like pursuing art as like the act of making like 3D or 2D art or something like that as a career. But I was also definitely very genuinely interested in kind of blending the two. So that's where that came from.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then studying computer science, and then how did that lead you into, well, I mean, there's a lot of steps here that we're going to go
Uh-huh.
into, but so what was the next step after that? So you
Yeah.
graduated computer science. So then where did we go from there?
Yeah. Actually, even before I graduated, I learned about a like I had like taught myself Unity, which is a really popular game development engine. It's like a really important tool for making video games before I had started college. And this is highly unusual and not necessary at all, but like I did that, and then my freshman year of college I learned that there was actually an indie game studio in town in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and I applied for like an internship there for the first summer of college. I will say like that's really like unusual, and most people don't get like college internships until at least like their like summer after their like junior year. But there are like college internships, and if you're really interested and you're in college, that's definitely something you should be looking for. And then that led to me like, being like highly qualified to get an internship at EA my final summer of college. And then that internship led to the first job that I had right out of college, which was at EA in the Bay Area, which started the long saga of me getting sucked into California that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
I kind of always wanted to like live in Austin. Like I lived there like my senior year of high school and I thought it was really cool, but I just kept getting hired in California. So here I
Nice.
am.
So now
Yeah.
you're slowly becoming one of us.
Yeah. I know. I actually just got like my California driver's license yesterday. I was supposed to
Really?
do that a really long time ago, but I just couldn't let go.
So
But I
wait,
had
so you
to.
had your
Yeah.
your Texas
Yeah. Yeah.
license or like
Yeah.
driver's license?
Yeah, it didn't
Oh,
expire until my birthday this year, so that's why I only just got my California driver's license,
nice.
so
I love it.
yeah.
Okay, so then sucked into California, job at EA, and so like, what was that experience like?
Mhm.
And then how did that lead to the next few things?
Yeah, so, EA definitely was, like, a decent job. I wasn't, like, super interested in the game that we were working on, which, is extremely common if you work in the arts and entertainment. Like, I think you actually have to get pretty lucky to work on a project that you're actually very personally, like, interested in, but I absolutely loved, working in games. I got started, like, as a technical artist, which was a really interesting route that I went on, which is a position that is the person that kind of, like, bridges the gap between like programmers and artists on a video game development team. It's a pretty important role because it's such like a cross team collaborative like industry. And from my like initial interest being both in like art and programming, it really naturally led me there. Um, and do you want me to continue the story through Blizzard or where
Yeah,
like
sure.
okay, yeah. Basically I was at EA for like not even a year and a half, and then a friend of mine from Baton Rouge, from my college town, like, offered me a position working on his indie game. And that was like so like aligned with my career goals of having my own studio someday. I was like the opportunity to actually like work in the indie space instead of at a AAA company, which is what we call those like huge, like, multi-million budget like games at like EA and stuff. I was like, that's like absolutely like what I want to do. So I took a big risk and I quit and I moved back to my college town. And I was actually on that project for under a year. Total mess. It was a
Nice.
total mess. It was a big risk. But because of the stuff I was like learning on that project, I was, because, the nice thing about getting to work on an indie project rather than at like a big corporation is like you don't get put in like a box. of like, okay, there's like a huge team and everybody needs to fill this niche little role at like a AAA company. In indie, you kind of get to like build whatever you want to as long as it's like moving the game forward. And so I got to explore graphics programming, which was not a route that I would have been able to go on at like EA on my last team. Um, and then as I was learning, I started writing a blog of tutorials that were basically just like turning around and teaching everybody like everything that I had learned about graphics programming as I was like learning it. And um, then basically the way that I ended up at Blizzard, um, the the technical director on a team at Blizzard and a couple other people on the team like happened upon my blog because I was writing about stuff that they were trying to do like in this really particular niche. And so the technical director was following me on Twitter because of like the blog stuff that I was posting. And then one day that I tweeted I was looking for a job and he was basically like, "Well, we've been reading this guy's tutorials anyway. Like, we should just
Yeah.
like hire
You hired
him."
this guy?
Yeah, and so I got hired on the team, and then I had to move back to
Oh, there
California.
you go.
But it was the best thing that like it's like one of the best things that's ever happened to me.
Yeah.
And then I was at Blizzard for a couple of years, and the story continues. But
Mhm.
yeah,
Nice. So
yeah,
that's crazy. So I guess I want to highlight something. And
mhm,
I mean, I've heard this story before when you told me, which was, well, first off, you learned a lot at the indie game place
yeah,
because you were wearing a lot of hats. And
mhm,
I'm sure maybe you covered this, that there was also a learning experience that you knew down the line would serve you anyways, right? And
yeah,
then you started learning stuff on your own and then kind of sharing what you've learned as a teacher, which you circle back on that theme later on.
yeah,
And then because you're putting this stuff out and you're learning and then you're teaching, and then you get recruited basically online via your Twitter and your blog and whatnot, for this job, which I'm assuming was like like a dream job for maybe a lot of people. And then you get to work at Blizzard. Is that correct?
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, like yeah, being like willing to take like that risk to like work on the indie team, it was something that like it was a really hard decision to make at the time because I was like, well, I like just got this job right out of college and it like has the security of like being at a big company and it paid way more. But working at the indie studio, even though I knew before I even took the job that there was a risk that it was going to be a big mess and the game was going to be canceled, like technically, that risk is like true anywhere if you're going to work in art and entertainment. So it's like I've just always had the perspective that I'd rather like given how risky like that industry is already to like I'd rather do something that like aligned with my goals and my like vision for myself and like take be the risks be ones that were like ones that I was taking rather than like ones that the universe was going to like force on me anyways because that's just like what working in like entertainment is like. So and yeah, and it paid off really well. I definitely like got lucky there, but luck is also only something that happens when you're positioning yourself to even have opportunities. If I'd never quit that job, I would have never gotten to like learn those skills that I ended up focusing the rest of my career on, never would have written that blog. Andy Bond would have never been following me.
Mhm.
Never would have worked at Blizzard. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I love that. There's a lot of good takeaways there. So let's move on. So Blizzard, you worked there for a couple years.
Mhm.
So then how walk us through like the next few years or so into what you're currently doing or what you're up to.
Yeah. So the next few years, there's like more like highs and lows here. Like I was at Blizzard for a little bit longer than I was at EA. I was at Blizzard for like 2 years and a couple of months. So clearly not somebody that dedicates to being somewhere for a long time, even though Blizzard gives you a sword if you stay there for 5 years. But
You don't want the sword.
I could never
You're like, yeah,
I could
no.
never be somewhere for that long.
You're like being somewhere else is feels better than a sword.
Yeah. No, exactly. It's funny too because at 10 years you get a shield, I think, and then at 15 you get a ring, and then at 20 years you get a helmet. And I don't know, at 25 maybe they just give you the rest of the suit of the armor and the
Yeah.
horse or something, and then you ride to battle. But
I'm so curious how you start with the sword and
yeah,
it's like, yeah, no defense, but go at it.
yeah, yeah,
And then it's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
okay, you can have the shield now. And after that, it's like a ring. Like,
Yeah, well, that's just
how
working in
functional is
art.
that?
That's just
Okay,
working in art. You always get the sword before the shield.
gotcha. They're like, you know what, just have at it. If you
Yeah,
survive long enough, we'll give you some shield.
that is exactly what it is like. That's a
So
great
funny.
metaphor, actually. Um, Wait, what was the actual question?
So yeah, so you couldn't stay there for too
Oh, what did I
long.
do? Oh,
Yeah,
right.
what's
What
after
happened
that?
after that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So after that, I was at Blizzard for a bit. And I really liked it. This is like my favorite company that I've ever like worked at for sure. Like, anybody that pays attention to like video game industry news, like knows that Blizzard had like a pretty big expose like a few years ago about like bad working conditions and stuff. And it was like Riot the year before that. I think like basically every single one of those companies could deserve that. And so you're like, these are like industry wide, like really deep problems. And so your experience kind of depends, not just like in the game industry as a whole or like at any particular company. It's like, what team are you on? And like, does your boss suck or not? And my boss was awesome. I really liked the leadership on my team. And I loved the people that I worked with. I mean, like the like day-to-day people that you work with at Blizzard are like some of the most like dedicated people in the industry. Like it's super cool. Um, Anyways, all of that being said, the reason that I left, I told you about how like when I was at EA, I was working on like a genre of game I wasn't really interested in. I got totally pigeonholed into that in my career. Like the team at Blizzard, we were also I kept working on mobile action strategy games. I don't play these
Mhm.
like at all, but it's like again in arts and entertainment, you get into one niche, people keep like hiring you to do it. And I still had that goal this whole time of like building my own indie studio. And so um, basically during the pandemic lockdown, I had a few like really key conversations with people who were freelancing and who were actually like running their own studios and doing other really like independent work like that. And they encouraged me and helped to give me the knowledge that I needed to actually like quit and pursue that on my own. So I quit Blizzard to freelance. I did that for a year and a half. And then I ended up working at a startup because the freelance work dried up quite a bit after the investors stopped like throwing money at the game industry after like 2020 2021. um, and at that point I started like really going hard on like building and finishing my indie project and actually running my own studio. And I got to the point where we were actually successful enough that we got like a small grant from Netflix to build it because they're trying to build out their like mobile games like section of their app. And so we were a part of a program where they were giving a grant to a bunch of like new creators, basically, especially like marginalized creators to like make stuff and basically help them experiment with like what works well on like their app. Um, and then I hit a wall and I realized I just like didn't want to do development anymore.
Just like, nope, I'm done.
It was yeah, really it was really really hard because everything I've told you up until this point and everything that I understood about myself for the better part of a decade was that all I wanted to do was like run my own indie studio. And but I just like I continue, if you remember earlier in the conversation I told you how like I was like shy about like being an artist and so I went into programming instead. And yeah, after like working in code for 8 years, feeling like that the whole time, I was like I actually really don't like this.
Love
So
it.
that's what happens. That's what happens when you don't take that risk and like bet on yourself. And then I got myself into this corner and I couldn't stand it. And there were just like other things about like the business of like working in game development that just like weren't working for me. So in January I quit my job at the startup that I was working at, and I've kind of shelved my side project. I would still like to finish it, but I'm not going to go as ham on like trying to run an indie studio anymore. And uh I had basically like wanted in the like really really long run to work in education. Like I was thinking like, oh, I'm going to teach closer to like retiring or whatever, but I'm like, you know what? Retiring is now. I'm going to
Yeah.
teach now actually. So and I'm extremely excited about that. So now I don't have to code anymore. I can just like tell the students to do it and then they have to do it.
Yeah.
So
You're like, okay, I paid my dues. I do it
I've
now.
paid
Now
my
you get to
dues.
do
Yeah,
it.
exactly. I've done my
Yeah, yeah,
time.
yeah. Okay, so
Yeah.
let me take a step back. So you're like, okay, quit. I don't want to do this anymore. How did you get into like education? Like,
Yeah.
I'm sure there are people who want to do the same. I also want to be a teacher eventually, like a professor one day. But
Yeah.
like, so how did that
I
opportunity
totally
come?
see that for you. You're a great
Thank
teacher.
you. I appreciate it. This is what I'm doing all this free stuff
Yeah,
for other people because
exactly.
like I like
Yeah,
learning.
exactly. Well, yeah, that's the spirit. Like I had so basically like throughout my career, like I've kind of always tried to with the success that I've had like give other people the ladder instead of like pulling it up from under me. Like, I've always like throughout my career done different like mentorship programs or volunteer work or like community building, writing the tutorials. UCI in particular, there was just one particular mentorship program that I did. I was mentoring the capstone class, which is like the final big like project course for like the game development program at UCI. I did that for several quarters when I was working at Blizzard, and then after that, I was introduced to it by another colleague who worked at Blizzard.
It's like a volunteer
Yeah, it
thing.
was just total volunteer thing. It was like I would go um, when it was in person in 2019. I would meet up like every other week with a particular group of students that was like building a game. There was like um, a gaggle of game developers from various companies who would like come meet with a class and like both like help the students solve like development problems and then also just like give like career advice and stuff. Um, Basically connections that I made through that, like the colleague who helped me get into that in the first place. Then when I was like putting out this call in January, like, hey, I really want to get into education. Like, does anybody know anybody that works in education that can help me with this? This is my friend Nikki who got me into that mentorship program. Helped get me in contact with the curriculum head at UCI who basically recruited me to then come teach for them in this fall. So yeah, that definitely only happened because universities to get like your first teaching job, you still have to have you have to show some dedication to like teaching people, and so doing the mentorship and having lecturing experience at universities already because I did guest lectures for my friends. Like again, this is all like volunteer work. At the time that I was doing it, I wasn't doing it strategically. Like I didn't even know what I needed to do to be a professor because to me that was like 10 more years down the line. But it paid off. And I didn't even think that it was going to. So, but when that came through, it was like, yeah, very serendipitous.
Nice. I
Yeah.
love that. That whole spiel is like gold, especially for me personally. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
that's good takeaways from that. It's like you're doing this free, you're volunteering. It's something that
Hmm.
you enjoy, obviously, because you were doing it at the time, and then building your networks as well, which you
Hmm.
reached out to, so that played a key into that. And then now you got the offer, now you're doing it. That's like your career now, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's like, i- yeah, being involved in community is really interesting because it's like, you're gonna get the most out of it if you go into it like actually for the purpose of building community. But you really because you can't anticipate or plan or strategize like like it community benefiting you. But like if you give a lot to your community, then like people will remember that. Like my friend Nikki, like, put me up for that recommendation because I was like volunteering with her. And there's like you can't strategize the way that like the community is gonna like give back to you. You just have to like, put that effort in and like if you put that love out there, then I do think that it comes back. Yeah. I think I'm optimistic about it.
Yeah, I love that. And yeah, again, just that's just all gold. So listeners, rewind that part, listen to it again, share with your friends. It is very good advice. And Lyndon's a testament to that. I think his journey it's an incredible journey. I think it's great, and I think it's great advice, solid advice. I would recommend the exact same things to people. Building the community, and you can't really calculate the ROI on those things, but if you do the things that you're passionate about and that you love, it will. I'm also optimistic. It will come back to you in some way,
Yeah,
especially when you're aligned with what you think you're supposed to be doing.
yeah. Oh, there's one other note that I wanna make is that, like, I talk about things very positively, but this was not without struggle.
Mm.
When when I texted Nikki, like, "I'm trying to find a job in education," this was my darkest hour. Like, I was like, "I don't know what I'm gonna do with my life. This is what my degree is in. I can't, like I don't have any other skills."
I saw those stories. I sent you compassion silently. I was
Yeah.
like, I believe in you.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it because the universe definitely heard that. Because, like, yeah, I was not like doing well. I was like very sad. I was really like falling apart. And yeah, it was just interesting. You know what's even funnier? Like, when I quit in January, I didn't have anything lined up. And not only that, but my first conversation with UCI was not when I got the job. Like when I talked to the curriculum head of the game dev program at UCI, at first, like he was like, we're all accounted for the next year, but like I'm putting you on the list. And I was like, I'll take that, you know?
I'll take the list.
Yeah. And I just like got lucky. Well, UCI got unlucky, but I got lucky that like somebody quit.
Mm.
And then um and then the curriculum director like emailed me a few months ago and was like, "Hey, somebody quit. Like we actually have an opening for like definitely one, but potentially like 3 classes, like potentially more. Um like do you want to take these?" And I didn't even answer the email at first cuz I was so sad and like
Yeah.
in my feelings I was like, I don't even know if I want to go back into games. And then he emailed me again and I was like, this is the universe telling me to like get off my butt and like answer this email. And as soon as I got back to him, like we had a call and he was like, "Yeah, we definitely need you for this class." And I had dinner with Nikki like later after that and she was like, "Yeah, like he's like Aaron's like really happy that like you're taking this job because he feels like you're like saving him right now because they had no idea who's going to do this class." And I'm like, "No, you're saving me."
Mhm.
So, yeah, I talk about things very positively, but that's not to say that it wasn't without emotional, just because things worked out serendipitously in the end. It's like only because I was like trying and like being open to these things, but it certainly wasn't without struggle. Yeah, you saw the Instagram stories.
Yeah. Yeah.
JR's on my close friend
He
list.
definitely seemed like he was in a dark place. I was like, "Oh god." Yeah. I'm sure good things will come to him eventually. And I'm so glad it worked out.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, let's take a little bit of a pivot. Maybe not so much, but and we can probably continue this in a part two. I think you have so much good insight to give to the audience. But so art, passions, and hobbies. How does that
Mhm.
play into your life story, your career trajectory, and all that stuff? I know you kind of mentioned about that a little bit, and I know personally that you do a lot of art stuff. And then you mentioned that you're like, okay, now my self awareness. I think art is really the thing that I want to do.
Yeah.
So how did that play into it?
Yeah. So, like, making art is like the I just know that that's like my calling. That's like what I need to like do with my life. Um, the only question has ever been like how. And when I went through like the period where I was like questioning whether or not I wanted to be like involved in game development and like trying to figure out like maybe if I'm not a programmer, maybe I just be like a 3D modeler or something like that instead. That's something I had questioned for like years. Um, I went through a period where I felt like really broken because I was like, I just don't even want to work in like industry anymore. Like I don't want to work in the game industry. And like for, the better part of a decade, like I said earlier, like that was what I wanted to do was like I wanted to start an indie game studio. And then I got there and I was like, oh, I actually don't like this, which sucks. But the one like saving grace that I had was like, well, the one thing that hasn't changed is that I do still want to make art. And I know that that's like what I want to do with my future. I haven't figured out exactly what I'm going to like do instead, but I do know that still is like something about me that like hasn't changed, And some people, I think that anybody that has this like feeling inside of them, like they know like what this like calling is about. And I'm not necessarily saying that everybody that has that feeling needs to do it as like their job. I think that there's actually like a decent chance that like for the day job, like education is the thing for me because I'm like also very passionate about teaching. But yeah, art like, the stuff like dancing and photography that I do on the side, even though those aren't hobbies that like, led to like the Blizzard job or whatever, like there's still like a really important part of like feeling fulfilled even when like that career isn't, and like knowing that that's like always something that I come back to is like that is like my life passion. So yeah. I hope that I'm so
Yeah.
rambly.
No, no, no. It's great. This is like one of the best
Yeah.
interviews because you just like cut you off and you just go and I'm like, wow, this is all good. Everything is gold. So
Great.
like, yeah. So art is that you're destined for art and you do
Yeah.
this on the stuff on the side,
Mhm.
even if it's not necessarily career stuff, you do it because it energizes you and it's something that you enjoy. And that's I think an important takeaway for the audience, right? It's
Yeah.
like maybe art is your career, maybe it's not, but I think art or whatever you feel like energizes you, you should definitely latch onto that
Yeah.
because you can't just keep doing stuff without being energized by something.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sometimes that is like the question for people who know deep down inside that they're like artists and they have to like make art with their life. Sometimes that is the question is like, okay, then do I do that with my career? You know, because like that's like a whole separate question than like, am I an artist? Like, am I an artist? I think really technically every human has the right to answer yes to. And for people that feel deeply that that needs to be a significant part of their life, like the question is like, then do I do that with my career? Because that is very hard. And it is a different question. So I want people who are artists to know that like the answer can be no to the career question, but still yes to like, I am an artist, you know? And I think that there is still like a part of me that like, I do still want to try to figure out another route and like fight for it being like a big aspect of my career, you know? And I haven't figured out exactly what that is yet, but you know, that identity is definitely not lost just because like it's hard or there's like a discussion there, you know. But yeah, if you want to work in art for a living, like it kind of always is like going to be a fight. So just because you're struggling doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong
Yeah.
because it's always going to be hard.
Right.
But it also doesn't have to be the thing, you know? It's like nobody can answer that question for you except for you.
Hmm.
Yeah.
As you're talking, there's a few books that come to mind. There's Big Magic, The War of Art, and Lynchpin by Seth Godin. They're not all by Seth Godin. I don't know the authors for the other ones, but Lynchpin from by Seth Godin talks about like art as an like art is the thing that would separate you in any industry in the field, whatever that you work in,
Mm.
because you can be technical and all this other stuff, but what makes you stand out is like your artistries, like the artist within you, because you can be the best technical, whatever, or maybe there's everyone's the same technical level, but you as an artist is what makes you different and invaluable and like kind of that linchpin. Maybe that's not even the book. Maybe it's another book and I'm just combining ideas. But still check those out. Well, I'll plug my own marleyonocruz.com. I do book summaries, as you guys should know by now. But thank you for that. We'll go back to books and resources too, because I want to ask you about like what you think some good resources are for the audience. Next topic, you talked about identity a little bit. I want to ask you, so you, for context, you are a transgender guy. And I know when we talked about this in our pre-meeting, that obviously informs the way you think, your approach to life, and your own identity, and then your career and whatnot. I guess just kind of, I don't know where to start exactly, but how would you say that kind of informs your approach to everything?
Yeah, it really does. Like, you know, I was thinking about like how does this thematically like connect to the career stuff?
Yeah.
But I think like the takeaway from like me like as a person, both like my career and my personal life is about like not being afraid of change. And being a queer person, especially being like a transgender person, is like it is just like about constantly changing. It's like even if you're not changing, the world's changing around you. It's ideas of you and whether or not it's going to give you rights or not. You know, so it like yeah, it was something that like I've grown up in a very like accepting family, which is really awesome. I didn't start coming out to anybody. I think I came out as trans about like 6 years ago. It was basically right before I started the job at Blizzard. That was the first place where I started like using my new like, you know, well, new at the time, like name and pronouns. And that was the first time, not the first job that I worked at where I used those pronouns, but that was like the first the first like game industry job where I did. And yeah, I mean it was terrifying at the time. It like to me though, I'm somebody who's so comfortable being in flux. Like I think that's what it's like given me is being somebody who's like I thrive the most I think when things are like changing a lot, you know. When I'm like starting a new journey, um quitting a job, starting a new job, picking up a new project or like you know, getting into a new hobby that I started out terrible at, like dancing or something, you know? Like, I don't know. That's just where I'm like most comfortable, anyways, because there's so much like hope in those times of like something being better. There's like simultaneously like so much to lose, which is terrifying, but also exhilarating. But there's also like so much to gain, you know, like coming out as a queer person with whatever identity it is that you're coming out with, like it's so terrifying, but there's also like so much to gain. Like there's so much like being able to like be loved the way that you want to be loved, being able to love other people the way that you want to love, like being able to like present yourself to the world that you know the way that you want to, like you know not being like afraid to like express like what you're interested in and like who you want to be around and like your like views on the world like authentically, like you know like that's so important, and there's, going through changes like that, there's just, like, so much hope for, like, that kinda stuff in the future, so, being trans, I think, has just made me somebody who's, like, just, extremely comfortable with, like, periods of change like that. Because to me, there's so much, like, potential in them,
Mhm.
so,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think that's a really good takeaway too. I mean, what is that saying? Like the only thing consistent in life is change or something like that,
Oh,
right?
yeah, the only thing that what is
It's
it?
like
The only thing that doesn't change is change or something
yeah,
I
something
know what
like
you're talking
that.
about,
And then
yeah.
like death and taxes, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, death,
Um,
taxes, and everything changing
yeah, everything
constantly,
constant changes. So it's
including the tax rules, but
oh yeah,
anyways.
that too. That's a whole nother topic.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like that because I think it's what I admire about you and what it's prevalent or it's obvious in your journey that you've done a lot of growing and like you said that being comfortable with that constant like state of change and being open to new opportunities kind of like you said is like thematically where your life is how it's connecting everything together. I think that's such a valuable takeaway for people who are scared of change, scared of losing something. And I think even a bigger idea of loss, acceptance, moving forward, and not being too attached to things. I
Mhm.
think I was talking to a friend recently, random, about how to get over a breakup. And then I started to go very meta philosophical. I'm like, look, nothing is permanent.
Uh-huh,
So
yeah.
if you can get comfortable with detaching yourself from things, you'll be
Yeah.
happy because most of what makes us unhappy is an attachment to
Yeah.
something, a
Yeah.
person, an idea, someone's opinions, a job, a career, whatever. But if you can develop that muscle of okay, I can just accept what's going on. Obviously, it's like you can control what you can control, but there's a lot of things you can't. But if you are comfortable with like letting things go, a person out of your life or a thing or a job, then you're going to be so much more at peace and then you can accept the new things that come into your life and then just be happier.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah, no, I love that. I love you and I are both people that, like, when we give somebody advice, it turns really philosophical, right?
yeah, I know.
Like
I feel like sometimes I'm embarrassed. I'm like, oh, I just went too deep. You're just asking me for advice. Like, how do I get over this guy? I'm like, look, like everything is changing. Like,
No, you
just
shouldn't text her
detach.
back because
Yeah,
you
just
need to, like, understand your attachments to things, yeah.
exactly. Oh my gosh, yeah, I can go on and on sometimes.
Yeah. But no, I 100% agree. I mean, like, just like, for example, I'm a big proponent of not like identifying too deeply with like whatever company you currently work at. And part of that's definitely like got a political, like, workers' right bent to it for me. But I mean, like, the other side of that is like, yeah, that like attachment and that like identity, it's like a little bit of like a dangerous like game to play because especially again when you work in arts and entertainment that could go away at any moment. Like, investors change their mind every day about whether or not they want to be into some particular entertainment company, and bosses change their mind every day about whether or not they think that your game needs to be published. And that's true in any media that you could possibly work in. And so um it's so dangerous, it's so easy in arts and entertainment when you do get into a situation when you're like, "I actually really like the game that I'm working on," or "I'm so passionate about like Blizzard," or "I'm so passionate about like The Sims," or whatever, and I like finally get to work on it, and you just want to throw your entire being into like this like thing that you're passionate about. But the trouble with that is that like there's so many forces outside of your control that just like it just like doesn't matter how much like you make it a part of your identity. Like, you as one individual like unit in that sphere, like it doesn't feel the same way about you. The universe like doesn't feel the same way about like you, that you like identify and hold on to things. And that's true both with like your CEOs like and their workers and like the universe and your gender. Like, the universe like doesn't care, like it's dispassionate like about like any particular attachment that you have. So like an attachment that like you have to something, it's like it like there's kind of like a lot to lose by like losing yourself too much to it. And we have so much worth outside of any particular like identity that we have. We have so much worth outside of just like the job that we have, or like a particular like identity that we like have in the moment. So like being open to other things, like not attaching to those things, makes it a lot easier to go through those transitioning periods when we do like lose them. And that's not to say to never take joy in those things, but there's a difference between like taking joy and like being at a point where you would like absolutely fall apart if you ever like lost something.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that. Man, I feel like your class is gonna be half video games, half philosophy. I love it.
Oh gosh, no. We're actually like we're gonna be cramming so much material into the
Oh,
semester. It's really gonna keep me on
it's just
track.
yeah, just all
Yeah,
technical, yeah.
yeah.
Sign up for Professor Reed's class. You might get a little bit of philosophy if you get
Office
through
hours,
it.
however,
Office hours,
you come into office
free
hours.
philosophy classes. Oh,
Yeah, free
so good.
philosophy classes.
So great. I love it.
Yeah.
I was gonna go back a little bit and ask.
Mhm.
So I have an idea of what you might answer, and I feel like I would answer the same. But for the person who's like back to career, but security
Mhm.
and money, and I don't want to be in that place of like fear and like not knowing what I'm doing. I'd rather just have the job and the security and the big company or whatnot. But then we've been talking about art and passion and what you're meant to do and detachment, all this other stuff. What advice would you give to that person?
Wait, the person who
They're trying to pursue, like, the security route, right? Like,
Oh,
just, like,
yeah.
maybe it's not exactly what I wanna do, but it pays the bills being an accountant or an engineer or something like that. Um, but then it's like, yeah, but job security, right? Like, I wanna be able to have a job and have a family, and that's all real stuff, and that's valid.
Yeah.
But how would you advise for people kind of, like, on that fence?
Yeah, it's not really something that I could tell any particular individual like how to choose one way or the other.
Right.
Like that's like a pretty deeply personal question of like what like values do you have and what goals do you have and like what is going to like get you there, you know? Cuz it's also like again, I'm not somebody who advocates like everybody who wants to be an artist like has to do it. There are so many different ways to be an artist that it doesn't mean having to like be a career in like that specifically. And like you brought up earlier, there's so much like value that creative people bring to their jobs that aren't like art jobs. Like you don't like have to be a painter for like your like artistic and creative like abilities to like bring like a lot of value to like the people around you, you know? So there's so many other like ways to like approach that. So yeah, I can't like look at any one particular person and be like, "Oh, like you should or shouldn't like work in art
Of course.
as like a career," but like it's like you know, like you have to dig deep down and know like what are like your values. And if you're somebody who is going to deeply value that like art is something that you get to do like every single day, like 8 hours a day, then like you adapting to be able to like take that risk is like definitely something that you'll like have to do, you know? But if you're somebody who like values like security over everything else and that like actually is the healthiest like route for you, then like, you know, that's what you can do. But, you know, if the answer deep down is like, I do need to like work in art, then like being comfortable with that risk, like you have to realize that there is no perfectly like stable position if you're working in arts and entertainment. If you want to work in film, animation, TV, games, like any of it, there is no like any security is an illusion, except that right now. If you want to work in any arts and entertainment, like any security, it is an illusion. You could work at I mean, I just had a friend who like Riot had a huge round of layoffs earlier this year. There were like thousands of layoffs in the game industry in the last year, like unprecedented. Like I think basically like the size of the entire company of Blizzard was like laid off from the game industry in the last year, including a colleague of mine who I used to work at Blizzard with, and then he was at Riot, and he's been a game designer for like over 10 years now, maybe like 15 total. Most of his career at Blizzard and then at Riot, and he got freaking laid off from Riot. He got
He has the ring, right?
you would
Probably.
he definitely has like the
Something.
sword and the
Yeah.
shield, I'm pretty sure.
Right.
And that's like insane to me. That doesn't even make sense as a business decision to me. And he should have all of like the illusion in the world of like security, you know? And like certainly in terms of him being able to like find another job, he was able to like find another job. But like it's just insane that somebody in that position could be like laid off. You know, that doesn't even like logically make sense to me. So you like accept that lack of security now and like save money and have your backup plans. But you can like these risks, like if this is what you need to do, like these risks are worth taking. You got to strategize for it and you got to save your money. You got to have a rainy day fund, but you can do it. Yeah.
I love that. Every single thing about that. Because even not in video game or entertainment industry, even in secure industries, you
Yeah.
can still get fired for whatever
Yeah,
reason.
totally.
So it's like it's
Yeah, my dad worked for Enron.
perfect. Yeah.
he like he's somebody who had a he had a like master's in like business or whatever, and he was working at Enron, which was one of the like bigger like you know that was like a great company to work for at the time, and then that happened.
Mhm.
So
I think there was
Yeah.
like a Jim Carrey quote or something like that, where it's like, if I'm going to do something for security that I don't enjoy, or something that I do enjoy that has less security, but then in reality, it's like,
Yeah.
do either really have security? So you might as well do the thing that you enjoy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
That's the other thing. Life's gonna be hard work and suck sometimes anyways, so
right.
you might as well spend it doing something that you like to do.
Exactly. Like, choose your challenges, choose your poison or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I think that, yeah, that in itself, rewind that part. I think that's good for anyone looking for career advice. Like, everything's temporary. Don't be too attached to stuff. Know your values. Self awareness, like you
Yeah.
said, is really important. Security is an illusion, no matter what industry you're in.
Pretty
But I
much.
think if you enjoy what you do, you're theoretically going to get better at it over time because you
Yeah.
love it, and you're going to develop that skill, and then that skill makes you quote unquote invaluable, and then more hireable. But if
Yeah.
you're also doing the same thing like what Lyndon has been doing, which is you're putting stuff out there and you're doing what you're passionate about and giving it for free, the world usually gives back to you in that
Mhm.
sense. It's a lot of good stuff there. You ready for rapid fire questions?
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
Cool, cool. All right. So, first one is, if you could put a sign up for millions of people to see, what would it say?
I don't know if this would persuade anybody, but it would say discourse is not reality.
Wait, so one more time?
Discourse, like, maybe I would say, like, internet discourse, because, like, oh, there's so much every day somebody's arguing about some silly shit on Twitter about queer stuff or the game industry or something else. I just, like, have to log off sometimes. We all gotta touch grass. Like, internet discourse, as somebody who's, like, I don't know, people outside the industry, like, seeing game industry discourse, that has nothing to do with what happened when I went into the office in the day to day. Yeah, that's what I would have. It would be like the internet discourse is not
I
reality.
love
I
that.
don't think that would persuade anybody, but I would put that out there.
I love that. It's
Yeah.
it's also like media and stuff that people talk about, like you're saying, discourse as a more macro thing. It is so like not real, and yet
Yeah.
the fact that there's discourse, people treat it as real, and then it becomes a real thing because people are talking about a thing that's not real,
Yeah.
and it's just a cycle. So I totally agree.
Yeah.
What is your favorite failure, or something that like a challenge that set you up for later success? Maybe we touched upon it already, but
My favorite failure? Oh man. Probably like I mean, the thing that I'm going through right now that's, like, led me into getting into education, like, every day I'm, like, getting more excited about teaching. I can't wait for it. I don't know. Maybe I'll get into it, I'll be like, "Never mind, I don't like this."
yeah,
But my gut instinct tells me that I'm gonna love it.
I
I'm
love
so
that.
excited about
Yeah,
teaching.
I'm very excited for you. Actually, it sounds like
Yeah.
super fun, and I think you'll get a lot out of it, especially based on your career trajectory. It seems
Yeah.
like it's one of those things where it's like you look back and you're like, wow, connecting the dots. This makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Because there's one angle where you could look at me quitting a bunch and, like, leaving companies and realizing that things didn't work for me and spending so much time programming and then being like, "Actually, I hate this," as, like, a failure. There's, like, that's, like, one side of the coin. But the flip side of that is that, like, I have a much bigger breadth of experience that I can now bring to these students than, like, a lot of people. And not to toot my own horn, but just the fact that I've done AAA and indie and freelance and startup, like, I can, like, talk about all those experiences with the kids now, and, like, not a lot of, like, teachers can do that. A
100%.
lot of if you worked at Blizzard for 10 years, then that's awesome, and you're probably very good at the thing that you do, but you only know about the industry from that perspective, you know? So, I can talk to kids, like, who are going into their careers with an informed position about, like, a lot of different choices that they have, so,
I love that.
yeah.
Biggest regret, or if you could redo something and do it differently, what would that be from any time period?
Yeah, regardless of everything that I've been through, I have, like, 0 regrets except not saving a little bit more money.
Ah,
I wish that because I like, being a teacher does not pay as well as being a programmer at a
mm,
VC-funded startup, let me tell you, and I wish that I had more money saved up now. Oops.
that's valid. That's fair.
So that's just that I think that just happens when you turn 30. You just like, your last brain cell clicks into place and you're like, "I need to be more serious about my budget."
I love that.
Yeah.
On that note, favorite recent purchase of $50 or less.
Oh, I bought a really firm pillow, which was good because I was like, that's another thing that happens when you turn 30. Your like spine clicks out of place, and then everything hurts all the time. So yeah, getting like a really firm pillow that had like really good head support, definitely worth it. Even though it's like, why is this pillow so expensive? But then I took it home and I slept on it, and I'm like, okay, yeah,
Yeah, trust you're preaching to the choir. I know all
yeah,
about 30-plus-year-old spine pain. Ugh, I hate it so much.
Yeah.
Best piece of advice you've ever heard or been given?
Oh, man. Mm. I know I've been can we circle back on this one?
Sure, yeah, of course.
Okay, okay.
Any habits or routines that are key to getting the results that you have now?
Oh, anything that you wanna do has to be a habit. Like, right now, we were just talking about, before this podcast started, we were talking about going to the gym. Finally started going to the gym, like, lifting weights regularly for the first time in my life, and, like, finally actually started gaining muscle mass because of it. I 100% it's only because of the consistency. So it's like, whatever it is that you wanna do, that you wanna get better at, has to be like, the consistency is everything. It's more important than performing perfectly every time. It's more important than, like, I have days sometimes where I'm like, "What the heck? I could, like, lift this last week, and this week I can't." But I still go and I lift and I do the same routine every time, and my muscles are growing despite the setbacks. So, whatever it is that you wanna do has to be a habit. Yeah.
What are the keys to building the habit, in your opinion?
Um, you have to so people think that building habits is just about having some, like, conjuring self-discipline out of nowhere. I've made it about making the path to doing the habit as, like, easy as possible. Be honest with yourself about what the roadblocks are, and then do whatever you have to do to, like, remove them. So for me, getting into the habit of going to the gym, I had to go to a gym that I could, like, walk to. I'm not somebody that, like, drives to the gym. I had to be able to I was, like, spoiled by working at tech companies with big gyms, like, in the office that you could just, like, walk
Mm,
to.
yeah.
So it was like, not forcing myself to go at a time of day that I was not gonna wake up for. I'm not a morning gym person or an evening gym person. Gotta be able to walk there. Gotta be able to walk there in the middle of the day. Gotta be able to, like, go to the cafe and, like, buy a protein shake after. So building just, like, slightly more expensive gym so I could walk into it, protein shake, it, like, delicious reward at the end. It's all in the budget, and I'm not beating myself up about, like, not getting up at 5 a.m. and driving to, like, a gym just because that's what I'm supposed to do or something and it's cheaper. Just be honest with yourself about, like, how the habit will actually happen. Yeah.
I love that. That's so good. For those who are listening, Lyndon is like jacked. Like imagine Arnold Schwarzenegger at his
Yeah,
peak.
completely
But
just
if you're watching,
so
yeah, if you're
so
watching the
jacked.
video, it's a joke. But
Yeah, yeah. So jacked.
so
Also
jacked.
6 feet tall,
Yeah, 6 feet tall,
which you
jacked.
can't tell in the video because 'cause I'm sitting, so you'll just have
Yeah,
to take my word for
it's
it.
the camera shortens you by like a foot or so.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
I love it. If time and money weren't an obstacle, what would you be doing now?
Oh, what would I be doing? You know what's crazy? I would still be, like, teaching. Like, that actually is very affirming for me. I'm very excited about that. Um, I would be taking a much more expensive drawing and painting class. I'm taking some I'm, like, just started taking a community college drawing class, which I'm really excited about. But I would have just, like, skipped straight into taking, like, some, like, painting courses. I'm only taking the drawing one because it was a prereq.
Mm,
Um, yeah, I would be, like, drawing and painting, like, all the time. I wouldn't be worrying about taking enough classes to be qualified as full-time. I would work a little bit less. I would still be teaching, but I would be, like, painting all the time.
I see.
Yeah.
That's cool. Who would you call successful, and how do you define success?
Yeah, you know what's funny? Like, when I first, like, looked at this question on the rapid fire list, like, the first person that came to mind was, like, my mom. Like, I think she's awesome. Like, I think she's such, like, a perfect example of success because it's not like, oh, like Steve Jobs or whatever. Like, she's somebody who, like me, didn't, like, come out of college with, like, the perfect image of her in her head of what she wanted to be. I thought I had one, but clearly I changed my mind about it. And she didn't know what she wanted to do, like, really much at all. And so she actually, like, taught elementary school a little bit and then did, like, speech pathology, like, for elementary students. And then when I was in middle school, she ended up going to medical school. And then like, got her MD and became a pediatrician. And I think that's, like, awesome. Like, she raised me and my two brothers and went to medical school at the same time. And now she's a pediatrician and she's got, like, a husband and two dogs and four cats. That's successful to me. I'm like, that's awesome. She's got a house. She's got a partner. She's got a bunch of animals. She's got a job that she, like, is happy to wake up and go to every day. She has a state record in Texas for deadlifting.
I was just about to say, For those you don't know, Linda's mom is also jacked,
Yeah.
jacked as he is.
Totally. Yeah,
But actually, for real though, like she does lift, right? Like,
yeah, she powerlifted competitively for, like, about a decade. She doesn't powerlift competitively anymore, but she does still lift. But yeah, she did set a state record in Texas for deadlifting. That was her, like, favorite lift.
that's crazy.
Yeah, that's hella successful to
Yeah,
me. It's
I
fucking
love it.
awesome. Yeah.
Cool. Last rapid fire. Favorite books, movies, videos, articles, or resources that you recommend or share the most?
Oh, yeah, oh god, this is a good question. I think, I can't think of any answers off the top of my head.
It's all good. Any media that you liked recently that you've watched or listened to or consumed? Be
Um,
entertainment.
oh, just like any
It could be
entertainment?
entertainment.
Wait, let me
Be
think.
like favorite TV show.
Um, why can I not think of an answer to this one? Do you have a different one?
The other question was I think what was the piece of advice? So if you wanted to go back to that.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, we can actually we can go back to the piece of advice question actually.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So when I was this isn't really like a particular piece of advice so much as it is like a like concept that I was introduced to. So, we were talking about like attachments. And the one of the ways that this concept was like introduced to me was actually like during like the like pandemic lockdown in 2020. My my uncle led like a family like meditation, like
That's cool.
over like
Over
Zoom.
Zoom.
Yeah, for like a few months, both as just like a family activity and also because like he was really interested in sharing with us like um he he has some like oh, what is it called? He's really into Ram Dass. I forget what this like there's like this like movement that started in like the 60s with this guy who kind of like brought a lot of like values that he was learning like through like learning like yoga like to like people in the states. And there's certainly like a lot to say about like cultural appropriation and such that happened as a result. But the values that he brought about like attachments and like kind of like being able to like be present in like the moment. Those like there's not like really one good snappy like quote or like piece of advice that I can like give from that, but that was really really valuable to me, and that it kind of like introduced those like concepts to me of like um letting yourself like exist in the moment without like these like identities and like attachments being something that are like, causing us like pain in our daily life. And that's really like a philosophy that's like helped me a lot and process and kind of like see all of the things that I've been through with my career and all of these like changes and stuff that have happened in my life is like, thematically whole. And definitely informed the chats that we're doing today. So thanks to my uncle for that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Thanks, Uncle. I like that one thing that came to mind was that idea of like, too much past gives you depression, too much future gives you anxiety.
Yeah.
And then it's like the
Yeah.
present is everything, all the good emotions are in the now.
Yeah.
So it just reminded me of that. Okay. We're ready to wrap up. Ending question. So gratitude. Shout out to my mom. This is where I learned it from. I always like to end with gratitude. What are you grateful for, Lyndon?
Oh, I'm so grateful for like everybody that's helping me go through everything that I'm going through right now. Like just not even just people like Nikki who helped get me that job, although she's helping me both in like a material and like an emotional way, but like all of my friends that I'm like reaching out to right now. Shout out to my friend Molly who ordered me a pizza last night because I was just like really sad and I was like, I don't even know what I'm gonna like cook tonight. Just like going through it, and she just like ordered me Domino's and pineapple and bacon pizza, which was my favorite, and threw in garlic sticks on top of that, which I didn't even ask for.
Nice.
So shout out to everybody who's helping me right now, especially Nick, you got me the job, and Molly, you got me the pizza. There's like so many emotional things that I can't like shout out, but those are very representative of all the things that people are doing.
Nice. I love it.
Yeah.
Any final ask from the audience or any final takeaways that you would like them to have from this conversation?
Yeah, I think like really the theme for me like is about like being comfortable with change and in times of flux, and I just hope that I'm an inspiration to people that there's like a lot of like different things that you can try, and sometimes the enjoyment is in like the trying. It's not like there is no one state that you're going to reach, which something that I was really attached to for a long time with the idea of running the indie studio. I was really attached to that idea of like um that I was going to run an indie game studio and that was going to be my thing. And that didn't work out, and then I look back on everything that I went through, and like the enjoyment was in like all the things that I was trying like the whole time, and like there's so much that I learned from that like even though I'm not running an indie studio with it, I'm now going to be able to pass it on to my students and like be able to help them. And so I don't know, things never work out exactly as well as you wanted them to. It's never the perfect picture that you wanted, but it's also never the bad scenario that you imagined. It's always a secret third thing that is never the perfection nor the depths of despair that you thought it was going to be. It's always something secret, and it's not in the middle of those two things. It's way off to the side, and it's not something that you could have like predicted. But it like the journey's always it, because we can't predict what those things are going to be. So yeah,
I love it. I think if you get through life, the older that you get, you start to realize that truth, where it's just like it
yeah,
never goes as I planned, and it also is not as bad as I thought.
yeah,
Somewhere in
exactly.
between, somewhere out there,
Yeah,
I'd never expected. I love
yeah.
that. All right, cool. So, Lyndon, where can people find you if they want to reach out or see what you're up to?
Yeah, best place to follow me now, because again, I'm tired of Twitter discourse, is on Instagram, at Out of Mana, OUTMA. Oh, wait, OUT. I can spell OUTOFLO. It's on the screen. Great.
Woo! And if you're listening to it, it's in the show notes description. You'll
Yeah,
see it.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So Instagram, yeah,
Yeah, Instagram's definitely the best. That's also my handle on Twitter, but I don't go on that website anymore.
yeah.
It hasn't gotten me a job in years,
There you
so
go. It served its purpose.
it did. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, that is it. We will wrap up. Thank you again, Lyndon, for being on the
Yeah, thanks so
show.
much for having
Yeah.
me.
Hope you enjoyed
Yeah.
as much as I did. I know I learned a lot, and I think our audience will. I don't know. I think they'll. I love what you've said, so I'm sure the audience will really appreciate it too. So thank you for being here, and to the audience, thank you guys for listening and tuning in. As always, just a reminder to be kind to others, especially yourself. And remember that you can always learn something from someone. You just need to take the time to listen. So thank you.
Awesome.